Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, build a driveway across someone else's property without permission, pay the price. After that, ruining a wedding reception for fun and profit. Finally, teacher denies bathroom privilege, student asserts his dominance. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss another episode of r/ProRevenge. Build a driveway across someone else's property without permission, pay the price. Not sure if this is pro enough, but here goes. I was visiting my friend at his dad's house in an area where the land is so steep all the driveways have to switch back up from the main road to the houses. A straight driveway is not an option, because it would be steeper than the building code allows. A few doors down the road there lived a nice old couple who until recently had a vacant lot next door to them. But the lot had sold and the new owner had started construction on a new house. Unfortunately, the lot was so steep that the new owner built his driveway partly on the old couple's land. It was carved out of the hillside with an excavator. This probably wouldn't have been a big deal if the new owner had approached the old couple first and asked nicely. But did he? Would I be telling this story if he had? In fact, the old couple had no idea what was happening until they came home one day to see a huge scar in the hillside snaking up from the road in front of their house, across the corner of their property, and winding upwards to where an excavator was working to prepare the land for their new neighbor's house. They were pretty upset, but being nice, reasonable people, they figured it was an honest mistake, so they went over to talk to the machine operator. He didn't know anything useful, but he was happy to give them the phone number of the new property owner. The old guy gave him a call and politely explained the situation, but his new neighbor, whom he'd never even met, was having none of it. He flat out denied that the driveway crossed the property line, and he was rude enough that the old guy was pretty upset. At this point the old couple weren't sure what to do. They double-checked the property pins to make sure they were right, and of course they were, but after further conversations with the new owner it was clear he was an unreasonable guy who wasn't going to come to the negotiating table willingly. The old couple didn't want to take legal action, because it would have been expensive and, frankly, the damage to their yard was already done. At the same time, they couldn't just let someone walk all over them like that, especially if they were going to be living next door for the foreseeable future. So the situation stewed for a while as construction continued on the new house, until one day when my friend's dad saw the old couple in the neighborhood and they started chatting. Of course they told him the story about the AOLA new neighbor. Now, my friend's dad really likes the old couple, who don't have a mean bone in their bodies, so he was pretty pissed about the situation, and when he went home he couldn't get it out of his head. That evening, after a few beers, he had a brilliant idea. He called up the old couple, explained his plan, and asked for their permission to carry it out. They chuckled and gave him the go-ahead, so he hopped into the rusty old full-size pickup he kept as a second vehicle and drove it over to the old couple's place, where he parked it across the encroaching driveway, making sure it was entirely on their property. The next morning the work crew arrived bright and early to find that they couldn't drive to the house they were building, because some jackass had parked a hitty old F-150 across the driveway. They saw the note in the window with my friend's dad's phone number on it, so they called him to ask what the frick. He explained that he had permission from the owners to park there and that, no, he would not move his truck so they could get to work. Furthermore, if anyone attempted to tow the truck they would be charged with trespassing and theft. There was no way the construction guys were going to haul all their tools up the hill by hand, and they didn't want to get in the middle of a legal battle. So they just called the new owner to let him know they'd be taking the day off and that they'd continue to take days off until the property boundary dispute was resolved. The new owner called the old couple in a fury, but the old couple told them the same thing my friend's dad told the construction workers. Basically, the vehicle was parked on their own property, so if he had a problem with that he could go frick himself. To make an already long story shorter, the new neighbor ranted a while, but eventually he wanted his house to be built, so the nice old couple ended up with a significant sum of money in exchange for an easement allowing the driveway to pass across the corner of their property, and my friend's dad got several thank you cases of beer and the satisfaction that comes from putting an AOLA in his place. ruining a wedding reception for fun and profit. When I was 13, so 8 years ago, my dad remarried after divorcing my mum 4 years before. Before the divorce, his fiancée had been his mistress. My mum is completely better off without him, and ignoring the fact that I wouldn't exist. I don't think she should have married him in the first place. Even if I think my parents weren't a good match, that's no excuse to cheat on your wife. This woman was freaking vile in all sorts of ways. She constantly belittled me, made fun of the fact I needed to take pills for my mental illness, despite being a freaking pharmacist. I don't get it either, and was generally awful to me and my siblings. But she was a decade younger than my dad and reasonably hot, so he didn't give a rip how she treated us. The one time he actually listened to us about her is when they were thinking of having a baby and my brother said he'd ask our mum to sue for full custody of us if they did. So anyway, they got married. I was a bridesmaid, cause that itch had no real friends. The other 2 bridesmaids were her sister and my sister. My brother was the best man, cause she didn't like my dad's best friend. He and my dad still don't talk to this day, even though the guy was like an uncle to me as a little kid. It was a wedding. Everything went normally. But at the beginning of the reception, before the first dance, we were taking pictures in front of a chocolate fountain, looking like the happy family we never were and would never be. I'm on the autism spectrum, and have a problem maintaining eye contact. This extends to looking at a camera. So when we had to retake a photo, because I wasn't looking, she leans down and whispers something in my ear. I'm not going to repeat it, but it involved the R word. I don't like saying it. Anyway, I kinda snapped and decided she was gonna pay for this. No one noticed, or at least no one called me out, when I started slowly moving the chocolate fountain towards the edge of the table. When it got to the edge, it makes contact with the back of that pure white wedding dress and slowly drips down. By the time she notices, it looks like she's it herself. But for all anyone else knows, this was an accident. She has no spare dress, and that stain is not coming out. So first dance, cutting the cake, speeches, everything. This woman has what looks like a stain on the back of her dress. It was a small revenge, but it was so worth it. What's supposed to be the happiest day of the stupid woman's life, and she's gonna remember that stain every time she thinks about it. They never did get the stain out, and nobody knew it was me. Until now, I guess. Hi family, if you're reading this, Suzy, your aunt and you deserve that chocolate stain. Teacher denies bathroom privilege, student asserts his dominance. I originally posted this as a comment on another post, but my so thought it was worth sharing as a standalone. I'm adding a bit more detail and correcting some spelling and grammar. Also, posting from mobile, so apologies for formatting. Context: this happened in the early 90s and at the time the teacher had been teaching for 30+ years. It was a rural area, so many of my friends' parents had also suffered through at least 1 year of primary school with this awful woman. I've seen a grown woman cry recounting memories of her experiences. She was really that bad. My 2nd grade teacher took pride in being a mean old aunt to her students. Wielding control over our tiny little bladders was something that gave her a particular satisfaction. One day during cursive lessons, this kid named Joseph asked to use the bathroom. She told him he should have used the bathroom during morning recess and would have to wait until lunch. A little while later he started squirming in his seat and again asked to use the bathroom, this time with more urgency. At this point our teacher starts berating the kid by telling him he is a little baby for not holding his bladder like a big boy and suggesting that he should wear diapers. Joseph gets tired of it, stands up from his seat, stares her directly in the eye and proceeds to unleash the most epic man-sized piss he could muster. As fate would have it, he was wearing those mesh material basketball shorts, so the piss just flowed unobstructed down his legs and pooled on the carpet beneath him. A wave of giggling quickly spread through the classroom, which was basically the 2nd grade equivalent of a slow clap. Our teacher just stood there dumbfounded for a moment before grabbing Joseph by the arm and dragging him off to the principal's office. As they exited the room, Joseph glanced over his shoulder with a big grin on his face. A legend was born that day and we all enjoyed our newfound bathroom privileges for the remainder of the school year. Teacher retired the following year.